Excuse me. Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another audio reading hangout with me, Simon, reading The Wonderful, More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible by Charles Eisenstein. So, had a yogi tea today, or actually yesterday. Love has no fear and no vengeance. Don't you just love the yogi teas? I love yogi teas. Yogi teas are actually the probably one of the biggest, I don't like the word guru, but mentors in my life. I've actually got more wisdom and insight and knowledge from yogi teas than I have most human beings. Can you believe that? Obviously, a human being maybe wrote them, but just drink a cup of tea and then get deep insights to meditate on all day. Yogi teas. And don't worry, I'm not getting any money to promote yogi teas. No sponsorship yet on Simon on the Sofa, but if you're out there and you want to sponsor this magnificent dive into authentic communication and spreading conscious awareness to elevate ourselves and hopefully the next generations and all of humanity, as we co-create and collectively come together to create a more beautiful world, then get in touch. So before we begin today, I'd love us just to take a moment, wherever you are. Of course, if you're driving or you're listening to this on audio and you're not in a position to close your eyes and sit in silence for a moment, then just go with the flow as always. So it's very hot where I am at the moment. So I'm just going to take a moment to breathe and connect with all you beautiful people out there before we read chapter 7. We're up to chapter 7, science. Okay. So a beautiful way to just connect deeper to yourself is just to use your breath, breathing in through your nose and out your mouth, or breathing in through your nose and out your nose. And just breathing as deep down into the diaphragm, as deep down into the abdomen as you can. It's really good before we often take in information or attempt to listen to something or be more present with somebody or something, or in this case, listening to me read, that we just breathe. That we just give ourselves time to connect to our own breath. And it's through the awareness of the breath that we enable ourselves to become more present, become more connected, become more aware. And in that awareness, all of our senses heighten. And this is why sometimes people take drugs. Maybe they smoke marijuana, maybe you do listening to this. Or you take any other form of drugs or stimulants, because certain drugs and stimulants enable you to perceive reality, sometimes connect more presently, slow down. But you don't need any drugs in order to become deeply present. You don't need any drugs to connect to the deep well of love and abundance that's all around us. You just need to connect to your breath. Simple, huh? So, a little bit of chimes for us. So there you go. I don't know how you feel, but that's grounded me down a little bit more. For those that maybe this is the first video that you've come across, I made a decision to read Charles Eisenstein's book so that we could share this with people that, you know, sometimes don't just like to read but want to listen on audio. And I got a lovely message recently from a friend who downloaded the audios of these so far 6 chapters and took them away with her on holiday and listened to the whole 6 chapters. So she was very grateful. And that also reminded me that it's high time I record another chapter. So thank you, Alex. If you're listening to this one, thank you for reminding me that people are benefiting from hearing Charles's book read. So let's dive in. I hope you're sitting comfortably and relaxed. Wherever you are in the world, let's enjoy chapter 7, Science. Our conception of what is practical harbors a trap. Practical encodes the laws of cause and effect that the old world has handed us. And according to those laws, nothing we do can possibly be enough to create a more beautiful world, or even to much ameliorate the awfulness of this one. The crises are too great. The powers that be too strong, and you are just one tiny individual. If even the most powerful of our system, the presidents and the CEOs, feel at the mercy of forces greater than themselves, constrained by their roles and job descriptions, so much the more powerless are we. It is no wonder then that so many activists sooner or later come to grapple with despair. They might say, when I was young and idealistic, I poured limitless energy into tackling problems, but eventually I realized just how big the problems were and just how powerful the resistance to change. Nothing I can do can possibly be enough. In other words, they have tried and exhausted everything in the category of practical. The question before us then is, what do we do when in the big picture, nothing practical is practical? Obviously, we're going to have to do things that are not practical according to our customary understanding. Now, here is a crucial point. Our customary understanding of what is practical is grounded in a worldview, a mythos that is rapidly becoming obsolete. Furthermore, that obsolescing worldview is precisely the one underlying the old world we strive to change. In other words, the crises of civilization and the despair over the crises share a common source. You might say that the despair we face when we recognize the futility of the technologies of separation to solve the crisis of separation is a sign of the fulfillment of the age of separation. Wow. I've got to read that again. You might say that the despair we face when we recognize the futility of the technologies of separation to solve the crisis of separation is a sign of the fulfillment of the age of separation. Wow, Charles. It marks a turning point. We give up in despair and something new becomes available. The old story has finally reached the end of its telling, and the space is clear for a new story to emerge. Now, this cannot happen while the old story still carries hope. If anything in the old world's practical still has any hope of succeeding, that means the old story has life in it still. That's why near-term extinction arguments like those of Guy McPherson are valuable, irrefutable on their own terms. They vanquish any hope within those terms, which encode the narrow view of the possible implicit in the story of separation. But now, I'm not suggesting that we abjure anything that makes sense in the old story just because it is of the old story. The new does not negate the old, but contains and supersedes it. My point is, though, that if we are limited to those things, the task before us is impossible. To those in or nearing the despair state, any effort to change the world seems hopelessly naive. There is a vast territory on the other side of despair, a new story of the world that births a radically different understanding of cause and effect. But this territory is invisible from the other side, although we may get occasional glimpses of it, premonitions. Within its logic, our situation is not hopeless at all. Where do our notions of practicality, realism, and causality come from? They are grounded in physics. The story of separation and the program of control that stems from its breaking down. Sorry, I read that again. The story of separation and the program of control that stems from it is breaking down, personally and collectively, not only because it is becoming decreasingly effective, not only because our crises are collapsing our confidence in our world-creating myths. While all this is happening, the scientific underpinnings of separation are crumbling as well. These profound paradigm shifts offer a different conception of the nature of self, of the universe, and therefore of how things happen and what is practical. These developments on the cutting edge of physics, biology, and psychology are hugely important for how we behave as social, economic, and political beings. They aren't just interesting curiosities. In fact, I would go as far as to say that no movement to change the world can possibly succeed unless it draws from these deeper paradigm shifts. I agree, Charles. First, and I've highlighted this for those listening, this must mean I thought it was even more insightful than the power of the first part. First is the breakdown in the neo-Darwinian orthodoxy that says that well-defined sequences of DNA called genes have evolved by random mutation and natural selection, and that these genes essentially program living organisms to maximize reproductive self-interest. Now we are learning that this account holds only in a very narrow realm. Macroevolution happens not through random mutation, but rather through symbiotic merger, through acquisition of exogenous DNA sequences, and through organisms cutting, splicing, and recombining of their own DNA. Wow. Now I remember why I highlighted that, because actually I needed to understand it more. It also happens through cellular and epigenetic inheritance. The lack of any interest maximizing discrete and separate self on the genetic level negates a primary metaphoric foundation of our story of the self. The genetic self has fluid boundaries. It is a chimera resulting, I don't know if I said that right for you listening. I think it might be chimera. It is a chimera resulting from an ongoing exchange of DNA and information with other organisms and the environment. It is not that there are no boundaries of self. It is that these boundaries are changeable, and that the self within these boundaries is changeable as well. Moreover, the study of ecology is teaching us that species evolve not only to serve their own genetic self-interest, itself hard to define when organisms can re-engineer their own genes, but that they also evolve to serve the needs of other species and the whole. This would not have been surprising to cultures who were close to nature, who knew that each species had a unique and necessary gift. But science has come to understand that only in the last generation, to understand, for instance, that if one species goes extinct, the whole ecosystem is just that much more fragile. It is not that the rest are better off, absent a competitor. The interest of each is the interest of all. An even deeper challenge to the old story of the world is the quantum revolution in physics. More than 80 years old now, but so foreign to the scientific assumptions of the preceding centuries and to our dominant story of the world, that we find it terribly counterintuitive and weird to this day. I hesitate to venture into this territory because the wanton use of the word quantum to imbue a scientific cachet into all manner of questionable ideas and products has rendered the word almost meaningless. Nonetheless, quantum phenomena so flagrantly violate the basis of practicality, as I've described it, that a short explanation is in order. Please understand that I am invoking quantum mechanics not as a proof of any assertion in this book, but rather on a mytho-poetic level, as a source of intuition and metaphor. A basic principle, expounded earlier, of the Newtonian universe is that things don't just happen without a cause. You have to make it happen. But in the quantum world, this is simply not true. Rather than being fully determined by the totality of forces bearing upon them, quantum particles like photons and electrons behave randomly. In aggregate, one may calculate the probable distribution of their behavior, but for any given photon, a complete account of every physical influence upon it is insufficient to predict its behavior. An example, photon A might go through the slit and end up here. Photon B might end up there. Why? Question mark. There's no reason, no cause. Physics therefore calls the behavior random. Here, at the very basis of our explanation of physical reality is acausality. Things can happen without any force making them happen. The above account, though suitably simplified, is beyond dispute. Physics has tried and failed to preserve determinism for 90 years. The situation has not improved since Einstein's famous protest, which is, God does not play dice with the universe. Unable to remove indeterminacy, hold up. Unable to remove indeterminacy, wow, I've not said that word before, altogether, physics had to settle for burying it safely in the microcosm. Random quantum behavior adds up in the aggregate to approximate the determinant causal behavior of the human world, in which, as before, nothing happens without some force being responsible. We spoke about this in the other chapter. Why does one photon go here and one go there, if not compelled by some force? Well, why do you do one thing rather than the other, if not compelled by some force? You choose. So the obvious intuitive answer is that the photon chooses its course. Physics, of course, cannot countenance such an answer. So far outside the scope of scientific thought, it is as to be beyond laughable. Physics, and remember, physics lies at the foundation of our story of the world, of what is real, what is practical, how things work. Our physics says instead that the behavior is random, preserving at the price of our causality a universe of unconscious generic building blocks. For indeed, to ascribe choice to something as humble as a photon or an electron would be to acknowledge our universe as intelligent through and through. No longer would the universe be just a bunch of stuff. No longer would we so cavalierly arrogate to ourselves the role of its lords and masters. The core project of our story of the people would be shaken to its very foundations. So there's a lot there. Let us pause. Let us pause to note that most people who have ever lived on Earth would have no trouble believing that the universe is intelligent through and through. Pre-modern people, animists or panentheists, ascribed sentience to all beings, not only plants and animals, but even rocks and clouds. Young children in our own society tend to do the same. We call it personification or projection, and think that we know better than children and animists, that actually the universe is mostly a dead, insensate place. Maybe you don't want your assessing or expanding creative power to depend on accepting the proposal that even electrons bear sentience. Okay, fine. I won't insist. Here at least is a place where force is not the cause of behavior. Moreover, modern physics offers a second, perhaps even more severe challenge to the story of separation: the breakdown of the basic self/other distinction. We are accustomed to a universe in which existence occurs outside a backdrop of an objective Cartesian coordinate system of space and time. If something exists, it occupies point X, Y, or Z at time T. And this existence is independent of you, me, or any other being in the universe. Even if we know about the quantum measurement paradox or entanglement, the assumption of objectivity is woven so deeply into our perceptions that to deny it is laughable. So, say you go to bed before the election results come in. You wake up the next morning. Who won? You may not know yet, but you wouldn't deny that it's already been decided, right? That there is a fact of the matter that exists independently of your knowledge. Or let's say that you are investigating a traffic accident. Each party to the accident has a different version of what happened. Would you deny that there is a reality independent of their stories, consisting of what, in brackets, what actually happened? I would not indulge in these ontological musings at all if it were not for the fact, again in brackets, the fact that the old inaccurate story of being, the separate self marooned in an external objective universe, is a recipe for impotence and despair. Separate from the world, nothing we do can matter very much. In the vast, uncoordinated melee of separate selves and impersonal forces that compose the universe, our ability to change the course of events depends on the amount of force we can muster or inspire, if only others would listen. And being separate from us Their choices are beyond our control. Unless we make them listen, back we are again to force. In particular, this story devalues most of the small personal acts of service that we experience on the feeling level as important, and that characterize the kind of world we would like to live in. For example, in the world of separation, if you want to change the world, stop global warming, or save the sea turtles, then it would be a waste of time to volunteer at a hospice, rescue a lost puppy, or give food to a homeless person. That old lady is going to die anyway. What does it matter if her passing is a little more comfortable? Maybe she'd have spent those hours educating the young to imbue them with ecological awareness. To base our decisions on their calculable, measurable effects is itself part of the story of separation. We might call it instrumentalism, and it rests on the belief that our understanding of causality is complete, that we can know with reasonable certainty what the full effects are going to be. But this certainty is increasingly unjustified. Science preserved it for a while by relegating quantum into indeterminacy, right? Wow, that's got to be highlighted. To the microcosm by ignoring the full significance of nonlinear dynamics with its order out of chaos, and by denying any phenomena that bespeak an intelligent, interconnected universe. But today it becomes harder and harder to hold this edifice together. Even if the intended effect is something noble, the instrumentalist mindset alienates us from our other sources of knowledge and guidance that make sense only within a different story of self and world. And it can lead to monstrous results. Who knows who or what we must sacrifice for the cause? George Orwell made his point in 1984. That's a book called 1984, when O'Brien, the party official, is pretending to recruit Winston into the revolutionary brotherhood that seeks to topple the party. There's a little bit of the script here that I'm going to read. You are prepared to give your lives? Yes. You are prepared to commit murder? Yes. To commit acts of sabotage which may cause the death of hundreds of innocent people? Yes. To betray your country to foreign powers? Yes. You are prepared to cheat, to forge, to blackmail, to corrupt the minds of children, to distribute habit-forming drugs, to encourage prostitution, to disseminate venereal diseases, to do anything which is likely to cause demoralization and weaken the power of the party. Venereal. Start to get that right. Yes. If, for example, it would somehow serve our interest to throw sulfuric acid in a child's face, are you prepared to do that? Yes. Winston, it is shown, is really no different from the party in putting an abstract and unreachable goal ahead of any means. It is significant that the brotherhood is phony, a fabrication of the party. It is the party. In the same way, only perhaps more subtly, the social or environmental crusader who sacrifices human values for the cause is no true revolutionary at all, but the opposite, a pillar of the system. We see again and again within environmental organizations, within leftist political groups, the same bullying and underlings, the same power grabs, the same egoic rivalries as we see everywhere else. If these are played out in our organizations, how can we hope that they won't be played out in the world we create, should we be victorious? Some groups, recognizing this, devote much of their time to group process, seeking to implement within their own organizations the egalitarian inclusive goals that are striving to bring to society. The danger is that the group becomes all about itself and fails to accomplish any external goals. Many Occupy groups experience this tendency. Nonetheless, these efforts to work out new principles of organization and consensus signify a growing realization of the unity of the internal and external. It isn't simply about demonstrating one's virtue by being egalitarian or inclusive. It is that who we are and how we relate affect what we create. Beautiful. Beautiful. There you go. That was chapter 7, powerhouse chapter. Now, I think what's really beautiful, if if in there maybe some of the words I read are not understood either, because there's words in there that I would need to look up myself. But if you just grab the essence of what he's talking about there, yeah, he's just looking at science, looking into that that part of our old story, and why so many people base their knowledge on physics and science. What he's doing is just inviting the opportunity for us to, again, question all aspects of the old story. And if we are actually upholding them still, as he mentioned in the beginning, then we're also, they still have some life, they still have some substance, which is going to then, in my interpretation of it, have a load of a belief attached to it, and a load of intention, and a load of acquiescing, and a load of upholding, which then keeps that story alive. And it's, again, not to say from my perspective that one's right or wrong, but if we are talking about creating a new world, then the old one has to become obsolete, because the way that it functions, and as we will continue to go through this book, you will see we're talking about an uprooting and a creating, a co-creating of all aspects of life. Physics, science, psychology, physiology, biology. We're allowing in the potential of so much new possibility and different ways of relating, and how each of us relate and how that goes out into the world. So what it does for me when I read Charles's book, and any other, I'm reading one by Polly Higgins, a friend of Charles at the moment, called I Dare You to Be Great. And I'm reading another one called The Motivation Manifesto by Brenda Bouchard, who's also a magnificent book. And again, all these books that I'm reading are all giving the seed of what we are capable of when we break out of our old story conditioning. And when we realize that we are the creators, the co-creators, the grand creators of reality. Can you see, no matter what job you're doing in the world, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what system you grew up into, when you start to think that you are actually contributing to the co-creation of humanity, then it takes away all of our job titles, status, and all this other jazz, which limits us as well. Status, labels, attachments to, superiority or any other thing that we think we are. It just enables us to detach from all of that and explore openly the infinite possibilities of what we could be beyond all of that. And that's, for me, really a little summary of what I'm taking, as always, from reading this book by Charles, and just where I am in my own life right now. We are not these separate selves, and we are not these boxed in, safely understood in our current paradigm of reality, limited beliefs, limited labels and labels and beliefs. So there you have it, beautiful people. You're so beautiful. You're so divine. You're so unique. There's no other human being on the whole planet that ever existed and ever will exist as you are manifesting into form. Is that not enough just to realize that you are an infinite, magnificent being? Is that not enough just to make you go, wow, is life exciting me? Am I enjoying my gift of life? We in the West have the choice, more choice, it seems, than many other people, to actually consider what it means to embrace your gift of life and to celebrate it and to serve something greater than ourselves. I mean, that in itself is exciting. So I think this is quite a long one. Thank you for being here. I've got some nice watermelon here, which is awesome. Juice. Okay. I hope the sound was okay for this one, everybody. I am investing. I'm launching a new Patreon page soon for Simon on the Sofa. It's going to be launching in the next couple of weeks, depending on when you hear this. And it's going to be inviting patrons to support the continuation of Simon on the Sofa, and for me to also support Polly Higginson's cause, eradicating ecocide, and invest in some new equipment, which first and foremost will be a microphone and some other good things that can bring more beautiful content to you all. So there you have it. Thank you very much. Wherever you are in the world, sending you love. Enjoy your day or your evening, your drive. Maybe you're walking in the Dolomites. Maybe you're listening to me wherever you are. Thank you for choosing, out of all the billions and billions of content and videos, to hang out with me to read Charles Eisenstein's wonderful contribution to the world right now. Just making that choice already sends ripples of energy and conscious intent that we are open to the birth of a new world within us and without. Just by making that choice to be here today, we're co-creating that world. Woohoo! You are loved.